So today's daily coding challenge or lesson really is just about Plotly and the Plotly graphs object. And what I'm going to do really is kind of just go through quite a nice looking chart, and you can see when I hover over the pieces of the chart that they get highlighted. So these grey bars go dark grey, and we're just going to take a look at how that's actually manufactured and what we actually do. So we've got things like Matplotlib and so forth, but Plotly is an alternative, and I find it a bit more interactive. So I'm kind of like I'm interested in these, and this particular one I just saw as a question on Stack Overflow, and actually the person asking the question, and maybe somebody can actually post the answer to this one, is can I change the color of these gray bars? Because I think this is like the default color. Can I change it? And I think that the question was maybe can this person highlight the bar that's hovered over? So instead of going from light gray to dark gray, can I actually change it to say from light gray to orange? But also having it not like opaque, so like partly translucent orange. So that's kind of that was the actual Stack Overflow question. But nonetheless, the code that's actually posted with the question was this code up here, and it looks quite nice. So let's just go and have a look and see what this actually does. And the first thing is we have to do an import of Plotly dot graph objects, graph underscore objects, and the typical alias is as go, so GO for graph objects, that stands for. And that's just kind of like how it would have been pulled out of the documentation, which we could go to on a website. I have looked at the website before, but we could use any alias that was convenient to ourselves. And then the next bit is to look at the labels here, and we'll pull this out because what do the labels actually refer to? And so we've got like an A, B, C, and we can see here that A is actually referring to this value over here, and then B, if I highlight it in a different color, B is going to this value over here, and then C and D are going to the two right hand side values. So C is going to this piece here, and finally D is going to this piece over here. I missed that on the arrow, but it's going to this piece over here. So that's where the labels are actually going, and this is a sankey plot. So it's written like this, and this is what a sankey plot basically looks like if you want to do this kind of thing. And Plotly is a great way of doing it because we get the hover over. When we hover over it with our cursor, we see that we get the extra benefit that we might not get, that we wouldn't get actually with Matplotlib. So a nice little advantage there. Now that's the first bit. That was the labels. So again, like when we hover over it again, we see this extra little piece here, which is B incoming. We see an incoming flow count. We see an outgoing flow count. And likewise, we see that for all of our different variables. So we can see that for A, we can see it for D, and we can see it for C. And those things, all of these things refer to these numbers. Now, first of all, what is the sankey diagram? Well, we have a source. So it's kind of like the source is where it's coming out of. So our source here, the source here is 0, 0, and then 1, 1. So let's just have a little play around with this. But we can do the. I actually think that I'm best doing this by actually changing the numbers first. So 0, 0 is coming out of these 0, 0 is coming out of these, and 1, 1 is coming out of these ones. So this is 0 and this is 1. So if I change all of these, for example, to 0, or I change 3 of them to 0, all of a sudden we see that A has got one thing here that's 0, that's another 0, and that's another 0. So the source is now at A for 3 things. So we can see the outgoing flow count is 3 here because there's 3 zeros, and here the outgoing flow count is 1 because there's 1, 1 here. And then likewise we've got these targets, which is 2, 3, 2, 3, and that's what gave us the crossover, but now we don't get the crossover anymore until we do that. So let's put that back. This gives us, I'm just going to rerun it again, it gives us our crossover. So we got a 0 going to a 2, and then we've also got a naught going to a 3. So one will go down and one goes up. That's basically what this does. And the way that we can verify this is if, for example, we made the source and the target the same, that means that the source will come out of here and the target has to get back into here. So I'll draw an arrow going back in. So it must basically have to do some kind of loop on itself. So let's just go and make a source and the target the same by changing this 2 to a 0. And that should create this loop about, as in this one here now goes, instead of going from 0 to 2, either one of these will be 2 and one of these will be 3. So instead of going from this side to this side, it's now going to go from this side round and back on itself and get back to itself. So I'm just going to run that now like that, and we see that it does in fact do the loop. It's actually shoveled itself up, so maybe I have to shovel all of this up just to make it, if I can do that. I wonder if I can do it like that. Yeah, there we go. And it's kind of like looped itself around on itself. So that's basically the summary of how these Sankey charts work. And the final component of it is the width of the actual bar. So I'm just going to change this back again to a number 2 and rerun it so it's back to where we were. And maybe we can already see this, but the 10, 15, 20, and 25 are referring to the width of the bars, which is kind of like this thickness here, this sort of like bar thickness here. So that's our thinnest one, that's 10, that's our first bar. Our second bar is, that's its width. If I draw it nicely, that should be like 15. Then our next bar is over here. I'll just draw it down here, but that's a bit thicker, which is 20. And finally, our last bar here, which is 25. But just to like highlight that point, really, again, if say, for example, we made that final bar, like let's say we made it 50, so it's really big. So we make that 50, for example, and we make this first bar really small. So say we make it 5. So make this half. This one's going to be half the width, and this one's going to be double its width. So when we run our code now, we exactly see that this one's got slimmer, it's gone to half of its height, and this one's got a lot bigger, it's gone to double of its height basically. So that's what the values do. The values go into the width of the bars on the sankey, and the source is the outgoing components where these things are coming out from, and the targets is what it's going actually into. And each one of these has its position. So this first one here, A is 0, B is 1, C is 2. C is 2 and D is 3. Remembering that indexes are referenced at 0. So if there's 4 lines in here, when we see 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines, that means the index goes from 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's just generally how it works. That's how it works in 95% or 99% of coding languages. Indices are based at 0, and that's pretty much it. There are other little pieces here that there's like pad and thickness, which we could play around with. I think the padding will probably do like the gap between the sides. Again, we could have sort of like a play with it, because if we made it 50, it might be obvious what the padding is. Let me just remove all of this stuff. So I'm just going to run it, and I think it looked like it's a gaps between them, so I'm going to make it even bigger. So I'll do Control Z for a second. So it was 5. Make it 500. So the padding refers to this pad here, refers to, again, I've not really, but that refers to the gap between these bars over here. That's what the padding refers to, and thickness is probably the thickness of the actual bars. So again, if I press a delete on that and undo, let's move our padding back to say 5, and this time out. So we move it back to its original state, and then we make our thickness 200. Yeah, we see that the bars now have become much wider. It's very obvious what it actually does. So we move that back to 20. And then finally, we've got this line color, which is black. That looks like it's a line around the bar. So this is all just talking about the bars by the looks of it. So if we made it red, for example, we're going to have red lines going around the bars and the width and so forth. And of course, the labels. Label equals label. So each one of these labels is coming from this particular list over here. So we could have actually fed this entire list down into here if we wanted to. And possibly even, I think we could just remove label then if we did that, because it's not used anywhere else. It wouldn't have any effect. But it obviously looks a little bit nicer, I guess, to be at the top and have this referred to as label over here. It's the user's choice, and that's pretty much it. Source equals source, target, and again, we could have moved all of these variables. They just happen to be at the top of the code. You could argue, is it cleaner, is it not cleaner? Maybe it's cleaner seeing it down below. Let's just do that by way of examples just before we exit the video. So that's our source there. That's our target over here. These all have to be the same length, otherwise it'll throw an error, because presumably a source has to match the target. Not even presumably, it probably has to match the target. And likewise, these are the 4 values. So if it's of length 4, they all have to be of length 4. And the labels themselves here can just be over there. So we could have done our sankey chart like this. We could have commented all of this out, and it would produce exactly the same chart with all of the same numbers and so forth. So that's basically it. That's Plotly graphs. That's a sankey chart. Again, the way of specifying what type of chart you want is we say data. We say here the type of chart that we basically want, go.sankey, and I guess over here, if I was to just, I'll put a little bit in, but go and then dot, we can expose all of the different things that are available. I wonder if just wondering how I can actually get that. Maybe if I just do go dot there you go. Yeah, that was the actual sankey one, but we can see all of the different things that are available here. So we could have a bar chart, a bar polar, and so forth. This was just one example that I happened to have pulled out that happened to be on Stack Overflow that the question was being asked about. But we can see here that there's hundreds of different charts that are offered. So we can go to town with this. But that's basically a summary. So this is Plotly graph objects. It's quite a nice flexible sort of object. The question actually had it saved as a PNG file. That wouldn't be as good because you wouldn't get the highlighting over. But if you do save it as an HTML page, you do get that. And I think I'm going to leave it here. So if you found this useful as a video or tutorial, hit the like button, the thumbs up, like button, follow, subscribe, and forward this on to other people. And even if you don't like the video, still put the thumbs up, follow, subscribe, and like. And that's it for this evening. Have a good one.